Hi there. Thank you for joining us today for this S&G Live conversation. I'm Jeff Stone, the editor-in-chief at Cyberscoop, and I'm happy to be joined today by Elham Tabassi, Chief of Staff at the Information Technology Laboratory at the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology. Also here is James Wei, SOC Transformation Lead at Leidos. Thank you both for being here. Elham, we don't have a lot of time. Give us a broad sense of the way that you are working on artificial intelligence, technology, and the risk management that may or may not be part of that conversation.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation. So I'll start by giving a very quick introduction of NIST as the industry's national laboratory. NIST has a broad portfolio of research. We basically do everything from building the world's most precise atomic clock to working collaboratively with industry to develop standards for use of robots in manufacturing to help firefighters better prepare for and predict the behavior of wildfire, and also investigating why buildings collapse, as our scientists are doing it with Surfside. NIST has a long-standing reputation for cultivating trust in technology by participating in development of standards and metrics, both domestic and international standards that strengthen measurement science and make technology more secure, usable, interoperable, and reliable. In other words, more trustworthy. And that's exactly what we're doing in AI space. And that's a very critical in AI space to ensure public trust of this rapidly evolving technology. We believe, like many others, that scientific research and innovations in emerging technologies, such as AI, has the potential to uplift and empower all people. Yet the use of AI technologies could have risks to individual organizations and societies. And it's important to understand those risks, their drivers, how they present themselves in the different stages of the AI life cycles. And one challenge is that despite its consensus that there are several types of risk associated with AI, there has yet to be a concerted effort around establishing a taxonomy that can describe various types of risk and help us to understand, identify, measure, and manage those risks, and facilitate future efforts to test and manage AI in a way to build human trust in AI. So why globally researchers, developers, and consumers all have expressed a desire to develop a risk management to understand the technical and social technical elements of risk. And while the policy landscape that governs this area continue to evolve, we at NIST has started a process, we launched a consensus-driven, open, transparent, collaborative process to develop the AI risk management framework. That's a mandate that we had. We invite and encourage the active engagement from the broad AI community, our national, international stakeholders, to help us understand what are the risks, how to identify, how to manage them. We had a RFI out. We received many good comments, and we have a workshop next week, October 19 to 21, to discuss the responses we received to RFI and basically find a path forward for development of this AI risk management framework.
That's a fascinating explanation. That workshop is October 19th. Is that correct? You said?
Correct. So okay. It starts on October 19th, 20th, and 21st.
Okay. So people who are watching this now can kind of keep that in mind during the current moment. James, that's a big explanation. There's a lot of responsibility with AI and machine learning, and in some of the ways that these issues are creating new risks, helping us understand old ones. To what extent, in your experience at least, is AI and machine learning and automation really part of the world of cybersecurity from your lens?
Sure. So when we talk about security operations centers or SOCs, of course, the scope can be very broad, right? And it's usually a very long investment to train and develop analysts, and not to mention there's a nationwide shortage of analysts. I think this is where we can really leverage technology to help either speed up the maturity of some of the SOCs or just to make it run more efficiently and more effectively. One of the challenges, of course, is to make sure that you have the proper tuning and configuration so that you can utilize these technologies. And of course, every SOC has a different mission, different level of funding, and different goals that they're hoping to achieve as a part of their mission. So not everybody is starting off at the same point, and not everybody's trying to end at the same point. I think the recent White House executive order, M2131 and M2201, detection, incident response, and also EDR is going to drive and force a lot of the federal agencies that have to meet a certain baseline. And part of the technology space that we can leverage to help meet that is, automation, like a SOAR capability, or machine learning to help with detection. So I think that's certainly where these two different kind of product spaces will come in very heavily in the upcoming years as the different federal agencies try to meet the new White House executive order.
I can certainly appreciate that. When it comes to understanding some of these emerging technologies, we're starting to think about the future, certainly. What are the risks most prominently that you think people need to keep in mind? Are there ways of managing those risks? I'll start with you, James, and then back to you, Elham.
Sure. I like to use the analogy of teaching somebody how to do math versus knowing how to use the calculator. And sometimes if the analyst or your workforce doesn't have a good understanding of your environment, and you're solely relying on technology to tell you what's going on, you may not have a true grasp of what's really happening behind the scenes, because you're just going off of what the machine's telling you. And if it's not tuned correctly, or it's giving you false information, that can actually be more harmful than it does good. So I think the risk is, as people, I don't want to call these shortcuts. There's certainly ways, there are tools that can help us do our jobs better. But part of it is also knowing how these tools function behind the scenes so that you can set them up to meet your team's missions. So I see that as a risk of just different organizations using these technologies, but they're not optimized or utilized properly.
Sure. So when it comes to the AI, in our broader engagement with the community, we have identified these risks or building blocks for trustworthiness. Risk and trust go hand in hand, or the two sides of the same coin. James, you talked about the workforce and making sure that there is the right talent and the right role and responsibility identified. But I want to talk about the risk in AI systems and how to ensure that we build systems that they are trustworthy, and how to test for trustworthy of them. In that case, with that in mind, then the taxonomy of risk that we present, or the core building block of trustworthiness that we talk about, first you want the system to be accurate, right? You don't want the error rate to be low. That's the first thing that we build trust and confidence. But on top of that, we want it to be unbiased, right? One thing here is that we sometimes bias is designed into the system. Example of that is, for example, for car insurance that's higher for certain ages, but understanding the bias and to mitigate bias, and sometimes you cannot completely diminish bias. So bias, issue of the explainability and interpretability, especially that in financial sectors, there are already laws in the book that requires the system to explain how they derive to the outcome or recommendations that they have come up to. The vulnerability of AI is another risk. AI systems are brittle, they fail. We want to make sure that they fail safe. There also can be adversarial machine learning and adversarial attack to the systems when the systems, the AI system behave in ways that wasn't trained on. The reliability of the system, of course, is really important. So is the robustness, so it can keep the same level of performance for the environment and the data are not seen during the training. So these are the different dimensions of the risk. Of course, safety is another one, and privacy, making sure that the privacy of the individuals, that the data was used to train the systems, or the privacy of the individuals as the systems are being used has been preserved. So when it comes to the AI, we categorize some technical requirements for trustworthiness, some risks that they can be addressed through better design and implementations in technical requirements, and there are some social technical requirements for getting the trustworthy of the systems. And these are all topics and concepts under very active discussions as we are putting the community together, develop the risk management framework.
To what extent, if at all, Elham, do technical standards inform organizations' behavior? Again, I'll start with you, Elham, and then to you, James.
So technical standards is really important. Standards is part of our names, our middle name, but one clarification is that we are not standard development organizations. We write guidelines for federal governments and voluntary use by everybody, and private sectors pick them up. Example of that is the cybersecurity framework, privacy framework. Standards are really important. They in a way set the rules of the game and the rules of the road, and by doing that, they allow for innovation. They also, of course, provide an interoperable marketplace, and they improve the economy because of the interoperable marketplace. So standards specifications are really important. It allows everybody to have a clear understanding of, providing the same terminology and taxonomy. So when we're talking about, for example, bias or interpretability in AI, we all have the shared understanding, and we are using the same lexicon and language to identify the problem and talk about this. So the same thing for the metrics. So we have all the same interoperable way to do the measurement. So again, standards can facilitate a interoperable and improvement in marketplace by establishing the rule of the road, and basically creates space for innovation to happen.
Does that fit with your observations and experience and the things that you're seeing from your side of things, James? I know it's a little bit of a different angle, but walk us through your thoughts on that.
Yeah, certainly. So interestingly enough, she's coming from NIST, and we, as a part of the industry or government, certainly rely on NIST a lot to provide these kind of standards. And it just makes our lives easier, of course, right? When technologies work well with each other, when everybody's talking the same language, the same standards, the same requirements, it just makes the communication so much easier. It makes the tools, the operations, everything so much easier. So the more standardization I can see within technologies, within policies, the better.
We often hear about AI and automation. James, you alluded to this at the top of our discussion here, but we're accustomed to thinking about these concepts as tools that will help people work more efficiently. Is that true broadly? I'll start with you, Elham, and then I'll go to you, James. I think as broad of a topic this is, we will probably have to end it after this, but let's send it out on a good note in that regard. Oh, you might be on mute.
I'm unmuted. So your question is about the standards and tools for improving the AI. So yeah, I can talk to that, and what we need. So the standards and tools are extremely important. Again, as James said, to provide some sort of a interoperable or the same playing level field for all of us to talk the same language and do the same thing, and have some sort of confidence that we're going to get to the same, we ought to get to the same answer if you're going to follow the same specification. So yes, big fan of standards and development of tools.
James, send us out. Are AI and automation making things easier for workers in the cybersecurity world right now as it stands in 2021?
Certainly. If you're an analyst, there's a few things that can make your life easier, right? If you can stick with one tool versus having to bounce from one system to another system to another system, and then do a lot of very repetitive or potentially manual kind of work, that's where automation comes in to save you time. And if you set it up correctly, it can really save the effectiveness, the amount of time you spend on doing investigation of an alert. Within Leidos, I know that for some use cases, we were able to trim our time down by about 90%. So it used to take analysts 10 times more time to go through a certain investigation. Now it takes 10% of that time. So a product like a SOAR product that helps with automation orchestration can really improve my analyst value in that sense.
James, Elham, these are big topics. I think that we've only kind of broached the surface, of course, but we certainly will look forward to talking again soon. And we thank you for your time.
Sure.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.